Have you ever had a near-death experience? Or perhaps someone you know may have had a near-death experience? Well, if so, we would love to hear your story and have you as a guest on our podcast. For more information, visit NDE.world. Again, that's NDE.world. We would love to hear your story.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the NDE World Podcast.
Welcome back to the NDE World Podcast. I am your host, Ashton Lewis, and I've got my lovely assistant, Miss Daphne. Lynn, how are you doing, Miss Daphne?
I am doing really, really good. I'm into my evening and just enjoying life.
That is wonderful, and I love to hear that, and I always love to hear that from you. So thank you for bringing that energy here with us as well, and hopefully the listeners can be able to feel this energy that we are bringing, this love that we enlightenment that we want to bring to them. Okay, so
yes.
Again, you're listening to NDE World Podcast. Now, also, those who don't know much about us, we do a lot of things in the NDE world, and from just reviews, teachings, lessons, interviews, commenting on different experiences and things like that, using our expertise and really breaking a lot of this down for our listeners. So welcome. If you don't know who we are, again, we are the NDE World Podcast. And so let's get started. Now, how about we go ahead and just go bring in the first clip, and we're going to get straight to it. So how's it sound, Miss Daphne? Is that sound right?
That's perfect. Jumping in, getting our feet wet, and going with it.
Let's do it. Okay. All right. And we are rolling.
The night of my near-death experience, I was working on a research vessel. We had just returned from a job using a new submersible, and the representative from the submersible was on board. We couldn't enter the small harbor because the sea state was so rough that the ship would bottom out at the harbor's entrance if a wave broke under her. It was late at night when we dropped anchor a couple miles offshore and decided to enter the harbor after the storm broke the next day. The representative for the submersible was very anxious to get to shore so he could catch his flight home. A couple of other members of the crew wanted to go home. They had decided they would meet us at the dock in the morning. They talked a deckhand and myself into taking them in on our inflatable Zodiac. The captain recommended we wear life vests, and my guidance agreed to wear the vests. We were all experienced divers and sub-operators and used to being on the sea and in the water. We had to rummage around the bosun's locker to find the dusty old vests stowed below. Most of us had not worn a vest in many years, and these were old M West life vests. We checked our position on the radar to plot a course to the harbor and loaded up everyone's gear. Then we lowered the Zodiac into the ocean. The deckhand took the stern to drive the boat, and I took the bow to navigate. The boat had a V for engine and could really fly across the water. But it sat very low in the water, and we could not see the lights of the harbor for the most part due to the large swells and troughs of the sea. It wasn't long before we lost our bearing on the harbor. Suddenly we were falling as a wave broke beneath us, and I was shouting for the deckhand to turn the boat around and head back out to sea. The mate had turned the boat and started moving back out to sea when the sky went black and a ridge of foam was 20 feet above our heads. We were in a sandbar breaker zone a mile offshore from the harbor. I remember when I saw that foam, I shouted to everyone, "OSHIT, this is it," and the wave crashed down on us. The wave folded the boat in half from bow to stern. 3 of the 4 inflatable pontoons were ruptured when the aluminum and fiberglass floor broke apart and the motor snapped off the transom. I was catapulted from the bow into the ocean, and the wave spun and tumbled me around when it came down on me. It was the most raging violent force I had ever felt attacking my body, and I was separated from everyone. I had lost all sense of direction, and the ocean kept tossing me around like a doll. When I opened my eyes to blow some bubbles to get an idea which way was up, the sand and salt burned, and it was so black I couldn't see the bubbles. I did not know which way was up. But all of my years of experience as a diver had taught me not to panic. I waited and waited for this old Mae West life vest to take me to the surface. Now there are no street lights out to sea, so it is very dark. The sea kept tossing me around and my lungs burned to take a breath of air. But the surface never came within my reach, and as time passed the burning in my lungs lessened, but it was getting very cold. I could tell my brain was starving for oxygen as a sort of euphoria came over me. It seemed like a very long time that I was holding my breath, but finally the euphoria overcame me and I tried to breathe salt water. All I remember was the burning in my lungs. Slowly the burning went away, and there was darkness, cold darkness. Slowly I noticed light. It was growing lighter all around me. I couldn't feel my body anymore. I could sense where it was, but I was not in it. I also started to grow warmer and comfortable. I found myself drawn to a brighter area in the light. I could not help myself. It seemed the natural thing to do, and it felt familiar. A feeling of welcoming and welcome home, as well as an incredible sense of love, came over me. I felt so happy. I felt so comfortable and loved. My physical body was gone. I was becoming light without a form. I didn't judge this. I just accepted my change. It was so natural. Then within the light, I could sense others with me and more coming toward me. I was still moving toward them. Movement toward these others was something that just happened, but I wanted to be with them. I recognized these other beings or persons, and they were the ones welcoming me. They were supporting me and helping me to adjust. More beings came, maybe a dozen in all, and they were all around me. I knew them all and it felt like a family. Before I could communicate with any of them, I started to get flashes, images of my life. I've learned since that this is called a life review, and it's very hard to explain the relentless intensity of images. Words cannot do justice to the experience. Not only were they images, but also they were feelings, and not just my feelings. I could sense the feelings of others and how my actions in this life had touched them. I could feel their joy, happiness, heartaches, disappointments, love, all of their emotions. But there were no feelings of judgment. No feelings of me being judged on my actions in that life. It felt as thought I was reviewing my life so that I might grow and evolve from this life's experience. Then the images and feelings changed. I was being shown images that were not from my life. I became disoriented and confused. I was being shown parts of my life that had not yet happened. The other beings were supporting me, but not with words. They were supporting me with thoughts of love and compassion. They told me very personal things about my life that I do not wish to discuss here. Just then, I heard very clearly and distinctly the words, "This is not your time, you must return." I did not want to return. I pleaded to stay. I was told once again, "This is not your time, you have a purpose." Suddenly I understood that I had to return to my body and continue to live my life. Being in God's light made it even harder to return back to this life. I did not want to return. This was more painful than the act of drowning. The group of beings that were with me, I've come to call my soul group. My soul group helped me to return to my body. I was already longing to stay there. Returning was the hardest thing I've ever been asked to do. I became aware of my body lifeless and suspended in the water, still being tumbled and blasted by the sand and water. Sailors will take the end of a rope and weave the ends back into the rope. They call this the bitter end. Well, the bitter end of a rope had wrapped itself around my arm and was beating my chest. The other end of this rope was attached to the zodiac. When the next set of waves hit, the rope dislocated my shoulder and thumb and pulled me to the surface. 3 of the air-filled compartments were deflated, but 1 compartment still had air in it. My body was tangled up in the rope and the pontoon with the air in it. The waves hit me so hard it pushed some of the water from my lungs. I breathed in my first breath and my spirit was slammed back into my body. My lungs were on fire, my head was pounding, and I would have slipped beneath the surface again if I were not tangled up with the boat. I coughed and threw up and tried to breathe again. In the distance I could hear my name being shouted. My shipmates were looking for me. They had somehow found a flashlight, but everything else was lost. They swam over to me and what was left of the boat. We were still 1 mile off the coast. We all hung onto the boat and began to swim for shore. Once I became untangled, I was still having trouble staying above the surface. So I kicked off my boots and that didn't help. Next I untied my life vest and found that the lining was shredded and waterlogged. It was the life vest that was dragging me down. What was supposed to save my life had actually killed me, only to be saved by the bitter end. When we got to shore, 2 of my shipmates popped my dislocated arm back into place. By the time I reached home and my wife, I was in shock. She was a nurse and treated me. It took 2 days for me to really return to my body completely. Part of me kept a connection with the light until I repressed it enough.
All right. Wow. Nice story. Nice story. Now, this story had a lot of beautiful elements of a near-death experience. So,
The common threads and all of it.
yeah, the common
This
threads.
one had a lot of them.
It has the actual story at first. However, I like to actually go more straight into the actual out-of-body experience and the actual thing. So I'm going to kind of pick up right there in this particular segment. The actual, he was in the darkness, and the darkness turned to light, and then he got warmer, and then he was more drawn to the light. Remember? Mm-hmm. Okay, that's
out of body.
That's out of body, and that's the infamous light.
Mm-hmm.
And the feeling of welcomed home and happy and loved and just naturally
Laughter.
being there. Pardon me?
There was laughter.
And the laughter, yeah.
And he said it felt natural
And
within
that
the light.
natural being there, and that he knew all of them.
Yeah, he recognized, and they supported him.
Absolutely. So
Yeah.
that's a common, very common element in the NDE. So that's a very good example there. Here I've got flashes and life review.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate his life review. That he actually, and many of them do, said there was no judgments in it. You felt the feelings of others, or he felt the feeling of others, but there was no judgment in it. And they were to help him grow and evolve.
I love that. Yeah, because that falls so much in harmony with a lot of the NDEs that we hear of. Now, a little bit before that, dealing with the life review, and it says that words, I like this quote. In fact, I circled it. I like the part where he said that words do it no justice. Okay, we hear that a lot. But here's the part that really stuck out in my mind, that it's just a common life review element. He said that both mine and others' emotions were connected. I felt all of their pain, their joy, their love, their happiness, their hurt, everything that I had to do with that person,
That's that oneness.
etc.
That is that oneness that so many of them speak of.
And to me, that is the purging. That is the purging
purge,
in
yeah.
the life review. I don't see an eternal torment.
Right.
I don't.
I don't either. And when I was young, and that was my thought, my red flag for religion, that God was going to torment me all of the rest of my life when I passed for a few mistakes I made here on earth. I was like, how can a loving God do that? That's not loving.
Right.
And this life review ties all that in, that you get to experience what you've done in your life and are forgiven for it, and feel that what you did to others. That's beauty in that.
And you think about that. That to me is
Yeah.
the best way to balance
That's loving.
somebody out. Yeah.
That
Instead
is
of
loving.
tormenting and torturing you, here we go. Just so you know what that person felt. You may
Exactly.
not have even been aware of it.
Exactly, yeah.
But it just balances you back out. I love that. So keep that in mind with
The purge.
yeah, we're going to call it the purge. We're going to deem it the purge, okay?
Mm-hmm.
The purging, and that's what I've been calling it since we've been kind of
Learning this.
learning
stuff,
this. Yeah, that's your purging, okay?
Right.
You have to go through that. Now, and then you also mentioned no judgment. So
He did, yeah.
these people who have these life reviews and see these things taking place and connected to others, and the hurt that you feel from them and that they feel from you, and the pain and the suffering that we've all done to each other and others in our lives.
And that is so against the church doctrine
Absolutely,
of
yeah.
any religion you go through.
Right.
There's the good, the bad, the heaven, the hell. So with these life reviews, most people come back with, there's no judgment on the
Exactly.
other side. There's no heaven, there's no
And
hell.
I've also heard that you judge yourself.
Exactly, yeah.
Think about that. So it's not a judgment like we're being taught.
And there's such beauty in that, the oneness. I mean, really, if these people bring this back with them and sharing it with us, we can learn from this that we are one, that we are all energy, that we can help each other and be kind to each other, acknowledge each other, because most people walk around zombified nowadays and don't even look at you.
Right, and there's too many things out to cause division in the world that we know.
Right, we
There's no
need that
unity.
oneness. Imagine what we could do in this world if we were united.
Yeah, people's families can't even be united these days, so much less the whole continent or the whole world.
Exactly.
Okay, so with no judgment, did you catch the part about the future visions?
Yes, I did. I actually wrote that down
Any
too.
comments on that?
Yeah, I mean, we on one of our previous episodes, the lady had her NDE and she didn't have children, and it showed her a future child that she had to go back to, otherwise that child wouldn't have came into the world. So these people are having future flashes and knowledge put into their head about the upcoming events in their life.
Gotcha. Right.
So that's beautiful to know that, they're learning about the future as well.
Yes, and I remember that. Yeah, good example. And I've got here that he actually pleaded and begged to stay, and he didn't want to go back. What does that sound like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just like you hear so many stories, kicking and screaming, and just didn't want to go back. Arguing with their guides or spirit or source, whichever was particular to their event, was the resistance to want to go back to this body and this earthly life.
Yeah, think about it. Now, you said there's a good possibility that this may be an experience that you've actually heard about in the past, and and there's a certain comment that this person made.
Yes. Actually, that
would you like to quote that?
Yeah, that was going to be my next comment. Was he said when he had to return, that he got slammed back into his body. Now, the story, his name is David Bennett, for those of you who want to look it up. And,
okay.
And YouTube, you can look up Navy Diver, NDE, and he tells his story. And going deeper into the story on the video, he talks about how large and expansive he in the spirit form is, and then he had to be told, you're going back to that body, and he says, wait, I'm going to fit back in that tiny thing? So the expansion of the spirit is so much larger than this physical body. So I thought that was a very interesting point on the extras on the video on YouTube.
A very good point. And yes, I agree with you 100%. I've heard that a lot of times, I'm supposed to fit back in that, or.
Yeah.
Now, here's the thing that kind of touched my heart in a few different ways. When, that, he made the comment of he became aware of the lifeless body in the water and being tossed about and all that. So think about that and having to go back into that after you've been in this bliss.
Exactly.
And you freaks have to go back into that body that's out there tossed around and swallowed water you've drowned. And you got to get out and what's ahead of you. But before that, there's a note I've got right here. He said it was hard to return, and he made a remark that I think.
The hardest thing he ever had to do in his life.
Absolutely. He said it's more painful than the act of drowning itself.
Wow, that is intense.
Think about that.
That is intense.
It was and there's a good possibility once he started going through the intense part of the drowning that he shifted over into the euphoria. And that's what a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So the hard part was going from the euphoria back to the reality.
Yeah,
of,
you're in pain and suffering, and that's what these bodies go through. You have the pain and tortures, but you have to move past that and accept it and live the fullest. Laugh, learn, love, and just let go of all the traumas that we go through. Don't carry that with you, because that lowers your vibration.
Right.
It
Absolutely.
really does.
Absolutely.
And back to his story, he said it took him 2 full days to fully return to his body.
Right.
Completely.
And I like the part where it said that his spirit slammed into the body.
Yeah, I had that wrote down too.
Never
Slammed
have
back
I-
into the body.
Well, I wouldn't say never have I, because it happens a lot, but it seems like it happens more often that it's more intense coming back into the body than it is going out. Just kind of be mindful of that, Yeah, I'm sorry. I was going to say, I'm looking at the clock. Let's go ahead and jump on the second clip, okay? And that way we can be able to,
Of course, yeah.
take advantage of that before the time runs out on us, okay?
Sounds good.
Sounds good. All right, well, then we are rolling.
That night, as I was lying in bed, I felt my spirit leave my body, and I could see myself lying on the bed. The experience scared me, so I tried to rouse my husband, but he did not wake. The next day, I was in my bathroom. As I got up, I became very tachycardia. Tachycardia is a heart rate that exceeds the normal range, and very fearful, for I felt like my body was dying. I got very short of breath, and I knew I was going to die. I started to pray, because I didn't want my children to find me dead in the bathroom, and then I felt the sensation come over me, as though, if I just let go, I could die, and I felt very much at peace. Even so, I decided I would not give in, and I thought if I lay in the bathtub, I could relax and not get so excited. So I got into the bathtub, and as I was lying there, I felt my spirit, once again, leave my body, and I could see myself sitting in the tub. This, again, really freaked me out, and I climbed out of the tub, because I didn't want my children to find me dead in the tub. I crawled to the phone and called my neighbor, and asked her to please come over and help me get dressed. She came over, and I was weak, but I felt okay, so I walked downstairs, with her help. Next, my father-in-law came over to take me to have my surgery. When I was in the outpatient surgery center, they attempted to start me on an intravenous drip, but were having difficulty doing so. Then they put a blood pressure cuff on my arm, however it would not register. I laughed and told the nurse it must be some malfunction. When the anesthesiologist came in, I had this need to tell him to not let me die. I remember, he looked at me like I was crazy. I was taken into the operating room, and as they put the monitor on me, I saw the heart rhythm VTach, ventricular tachycardia, is a fast heart rhythm, originating in one of the ventricles of the heart, and is a potentially life-threatening arrhythmia. I then looked at the blood pressure monitor, and saw my blood pressure was 40 and dropping. The anesthesiologist became very upset, and started to run around the room. Then all of a sudden, my spirit left my body, and it felt like I was sucked out of my body like a vacuum. My spirit soared out of the hospital and into the universe. I mean, it felt like Star Trek. My spirit was traveling very fast, and I saw the earth below me, and I seemed to be amidst the stars. Then I heard a thump, and I landed in this very cloudy place, and the people I saw were all dead people whom I, as a nurse, had once cared for. They welcomed me and were all smiling. They parted, and coming towards me was my father, who had died 6 months prior. I remember how happy I was because I loved my dad so much, and he had died. My father smiled at me and held my hand and led me to a tunnel. The tunnel seemed to move slowly back and forth, and when I arrived in front of it, a bright light shone upon me, and I felt no pain, and this incredible love that radiated inside of me. I walked into the tunnel, and standing in the middle of the tunnel was a figure dressed in white with long hair. And his back was to me. I felt incredible love coming from this person, and I just knew that if he turned and looked at me, I would be dead. Beyond this man was an incredible place. The colors were interactive and alive. It seemed like a paradise, except the colors were alive, and the rocks and sky and grass and water all seemed to be so very beautiful, and they seemed to all interact with each other. I saw my life flash before me like a rapid motion picture movie, and I saw all the good things and all the bad things that I had done in my entire life. Then, I heard 3 voices. They said, "You can stay or you can leave." And I thought to myself, I can stay or I can leave. And I said, I am not good enough to be here, and the voices said, "Oh, but you are." The voices were so tender, and the thought of staying seemed so pleasing to me, and I wanted to stay with my dad, but I suddenly felt this tugging at my shoulders. It seemed to be pulling at me, and I knew instantly that it was the prayers of my family, my children, and immediately I said, I gotta go. In that moment, I shot out of that tunnel and soared through the universe. I heard a thump, and I was back in my body. And leaning over me was my doctor, who said, "Anne, why didn't you tell me you were so sick? You had a cardiac arrest. We resuscitated you and performed your surgery without anesthesia, but you are probably going to die, for you are in septic shock." And I replied, "Oh no, doctor. I was in heaven and I got to come back. So I won't die. I was very sick for 6 months and had a total of 5 surgeries, and I got septic many times, but I survived."
And we are back.
Interesting.
I love NDE stories. They are so fascinating, and it's just like every single one of them that you hear, it just really warms your heart, because it just gives you that hope or that promise of something so much bigger and more loving and better than what we have here, you know? Wow. Okay, so let's jump into this one. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this episode by, doing comments on this section right here. We'll,
Sure.
we still got a little bit of time. Let's just go ahead and comment on it for a while. I like the first where it said originally the spirit was sucked out like a vacuum, traveling fast through the universe.
Amidst the stars. And I have heard several people talking about being one of the stars, that we are that light energy.
I've heard of that before too. Yeah, that's deep. Saw people that she cared for. Said that she was a nurse, and she saw people that she cared for that had passed away. And they were there, and they welcomed her, and they were all excited and laughing, and that was pretty cool. Got to see her father, and her father was the one that actually led her to the tunnel. Okay, and then she saw the bright light. So we have right here the actual the tunnel and the bright light, and the meeting the family and the friends that she knew. Any comments? That's classic.
Yeah, that's the pretty much the common thread through most NDEs. But I'm going to back up a little bit here, because I have heard many of the NDEers say this. They felt and knew they were dying.
Oh yeah.
Most everyone knows they are dying. It's a common. It's that download that we get from the outer spirit that is common, the knowing that you're dying.
Right.
So, and then when she did pass, going into that bright light was love, and it radiated. So that's very common in them, is that love, the love. What we're supposed to be doing here. Oh my gosh.
That's right. We can't comprehend. And, well, to go with that, let's take it with that and tie those two together, where actually the bright light, the tunnel, then into the bright light, and the actual radiating love, like we're talking about, and into the tunnel, and she sees this figure in the tunnel. So we have that spiritual being that usually comes into around this time here, and it's different for different people now. So, and it had that tremendous love and glow, like we said, but also I like this part here that colors were alive. You hear that a lot too.
Let me back up before we go into that, because I've got some comments on that as well.
Okay.
But talking about her seeing the figure with long hair and really bright, she said she knew if he turned around, and I don't know exactly the words she used on it, because I didn't write that down, but in turning around that she wouldn't be alive, that she would die from there. That to me rings of the biblical perspective that could be some kind of religious indoctrination in her,
Could be.
where she felt like even her spirit would die from that point, because in the Bible it teaches you no one can see the face of God. So that's what that made me think of when she said that. And then going back on into past the light and him was paradise and the colors. Yes, that is absolutely beautiful. All of life interacting with each other.
Yeah.
That.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You hear that a lot.
Think what's going on out in our world right now. You can take a MIDI device and put on plants and they sing. I mean, we can't hear it with our ears without that device, but think about that. If everything is communicating on this level as well, that's the unity and the beauty of it all, is everything is one.
Yeah, those MIDI pods. I forgot what they were called, but something like that.
Yeah.
And it's based on that. And we may even do a whole maybe a coffee conversation one day on the actual phenomenon of the plants talking and singing and doing their own music and things of their own vibration.
Yeah,
That's
own
a good
vibration.
idea. Yeah, because it all ties in with this. Looking at the time here, let's go ahead and keep things going here real quick.
Goes into the life review.
Yeah, so the life review, and they called it the life flash, but it said both good and bad, okay? Mm-hmm. And then it had, this particular one had the privilege of three voices actually saying, or giving them the opportunity to actual stay or...
Option to go.
Yeah, the option, thank you, to either stay or to leave.
And I love her comment. I do. I don't deserve to be here.
I know. I'm not good enough to stay.
Oh, but you are.
But you are.
You are.
And
no matter what we've done and been through.
Always remember that. All of you listening, you are precious. And the thing is we forgot that. And we're not taught that anymore. But
we are worthy.
Precious, worthy beings.
Yes.
And then all the great transcendent masters taught us these things.
Right. And see, that's the thing. Most people have very low self-esteem. We've forgotten who we are as children of the Creator, the Source, that love of God. God is within us, if you want to call it God, that Spirit, that Source, the all-parent, universe, whatever you call it, it is within us. We are a part of the divine. And we have forgotten that because we haven't been taught that.
Right. But a part of us knows it.
Exactly.
We may not admit it, but we have to acknowledge
we
there's
have
something
forgotten
more than
it.
just
These
little
and that
vessels.
makes me think about the Remember book. It goes into this earth is a game board, and we came into this game board forgetting who we were, forgetting everything we knew. And we're having to learn who we are to play this game in life. And we have to remember.
Learned a lesson from last time.
Yeah.
So it's deep. It really is.
She was back and forth through the universe with her experience.
And then, in conclusion, how about the prayers?
She felt being tugged back. So,
and I've heard of the stories of that before. That people's prayers actually bringing people back or holding them back on this plane, on this realm. I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but I have heard of stories.
Yeah.
So that's a pretty powerful example there. That the prayers kind of pulled her back. She had the option to stay or go, but they kind of more or less poured in that direction. And she went back into the body.
Exactly.
Which is the return.
Returned.
Absolutely.
And people have major adjustments coming back. They do. I mean, I've never had an NDE.
Just you have to deal with your own psychology, your own reality of what happened, what you experienced, and not only that, then you have to deal with everybody else who
what
thinks
they may
you're crazy
think of you.
and they may not grasp it. So hopefully the things that we learn and the things that we share on this podcast will really open up people's minds and hearts, especially those who've had NDEs.
If it resonates with you, take it and use it. If it doesn't resonate,
let it go.
Let it go.
No worries.
That's okay. It's not for everybody, and that's okay.
No worries. And on that note, we're going to go ahead and close on that. And just remember, anybody, if you've ever had an NDE or if somebody that you may know that's had a near-death experience, please go to NDE.world. That is NDE.world, okay? And contact us. We would love to hear your story. Be a guest on our podcast. And until next time, this is Ashton Lewis and Daphne Lynn. We send you our love and peace to you all. And until next time,
Let your light shine.